It's another week of the Limitless Leadership Lounge, a tri-generational conversation for emerging leaders. Thanks for joining us again this week as we wrap up the month of October with another very special guest, Coach Jim Johnson has brought along. It is Coach Jim Johnson and me, John Gehring, here today, also reminding you that if you're enjoying what you're hearing here on the Limitless Leadership Lounge, make sure you're leaving us a review up on your favorite podcast platform. Maybe it's Apple Podcasts, maybe it's Spotify, maybe it's any of the others like iHeartRadio that we're on. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can find the Limitless Leadership Lounge, and you can also review us to help us reach more people and give us some feedback about the insights that we bring you here. Coach, go ahead and introduce our guest today. Let's get into it.
Excellent. So I'm really excited. Little did I know, I heard Todd on a podcast, Darren Peppard's podcast. Darren's been on ours, and I've been fortunate to be a guest on Darren. So I had to reach out. I really like what Todd's doing. I'm going to give a little bio. So born and raised in the great state of New York, and I've got to add because John and I live in upstate New York, and that Todd grew up in a town called Lyons, which is in upstate New York, probably about an hour from where we are. And Todd grew up with a home of two educators and instilled a love of education in him from an early age. Seeking adventure and a passion for athletics, he ventured to Houston, Texas. Not only did Todd Bloomer begin his educational career in Texas, he met his wife, Sharon. They moved to San Antonio and raised five wonderful children who have had the privilege of attending school with their father. Can't beat that. I was blessed to have my father as my phys ed teacher and high school basketball coach, so I know the feeling.
Yes, sir.
With a varied background and experience in both middle school and high school, Todd has gained unique and invaluable perspectives within the educational field. In 2014, he took the principalship at Bradley Middle School, where he honed his craft of fostering a family-like atmosphere on the campus. In 2019, he was promoted and given the honor of leading the flagship school in his district, Winston Churchill High School, to further expand its influence and impact. Both campuses he's led have allowed Todd to develop the blueprint to administrative success, which we're going to be excited to talk. Todd just released a book called The Blueprint, which is Survive and Thrive as a School Administrator. Outside of work, Todd enjoys spending time with his family and friends. On weekends, you can catch him with his wife exploring the wonderful city of San Antonio, which I've had the pleasure to speak in, and it is a beautiful city. I can vouch for that. And in search of a good piece of pizza, a great pretzel, or one of my favorites, a hamburger. Todd, without further ado, thanks so much for joining us on the Limitless Leadership Lounge.
Hey, Coach, thanks for reading that. It's comical and humbling at the same time when you share those things. And so, I truly appreciate Sunday Fun Day. It's all about making sure that on the weekends that you are able to kind of recharge and make sure that you're able to decompress and put the laptop down and really be able to spend time with family and friends. And I'll share before we jump into it, just outside today, this morning when I was at duty, I talked to a teacher, and I asked teacher how her day, how her weekend was, and she said great, and she said how was yours, and she stopped and goes, you always have a great weekend. I love reading about what you do on Sundays. And so, yes, good pizza, a good hamburger, a good pretzel. San Antonio's got a great food city, great food city. So thanks for being here. Thanks for letting me be here, guys. I'm truly honored and humbled.
Very well. Well, when we interview this, we are in the thick of football season, and
Yes, sir.
Texas is very big. But unfortunately, for the beloved Dallas Cowboy
Ooh.
followers, it hasn't been very good for them right now. We'll leave it at
Leave it at
that.
that. I'm a Giants fan, so
Yeah, yeah,
difficult.
they had a big win. So
Big win. My mother grew up in Buffalo, so my mom's a big
okay,
Bills fan. So
yeah. So I'm a Bills
anybody
fan.
but the Cowboys. That's our problem.
Anybody. Yep, there you go.
Very cool. So Todd, I'm going to dive right in because you've been a high school principal for I think this is the start of your sixth year, if I'm
Six
correct on
years.
that. And you're written a book about which we're going to delve in a little bit deeper in a few minutes. But I'm just curious, going back because our goal is to help young and emerging leaders, both in education and outside education, is tell us a little bit, one or two things, or maybe three, that you could share with that principal that takes over that first year, because it's a tough job. And I'm just curious, what advice would you give that principal taking over his or her first
Yeah, great,
principal?
great, great question. And I will share with you this. This is The principalship has evolved, as all jobs have evolved. The principalship has evolved prior to COVID, during COVID, after COVID. And so I think of it like as a BC, before COVID and after COVID. And so it's just the game has changed. And so I would say there are three bits of advice that I would just spit off the top of my head for any emerging leader is understand the importance of the first 30 days on the job. That would be my first bit of advice to them. And just to say that, once you've been named the principal of your campus and, the T's have been crossed and the I's have been dotted, the real job interview begins that first 30 days as you're on campus. What connections are you making with teachers? What connections are you making with staff? And what connections are you making with students? And that's where the real job interview in my mind begins. Is this guy who he says he is, or this female who she says she is? Is this person going to do what they say? Is this person going to breathe life into our campus? Is this person going to be our champion? So I would say really sit back and watch those first 30 days and just say, this is something that is extremely important your first 30 days on the job. Second bit of advice would be to seek input from three groups. And I like to laugh about it. I call it the Bloomer triangle of success. And there's three parts that function to make a school highly effective. And that is having student input, staff input, and parent input. And I kind of triangleize it. And a lot of times we get teacher input. We ask teachers their thoughts, their opinions. A lot of times we ask parents their thoughts and their opinions. A lot of times we don't ask students their thoughts and opinions. And at a high school, I got kids that are 18, 19 years old. They're going to go off to college, in 6 months, and their input is valid. And so one second thing I would really say is look in those first year on the job, that first semester on the job, how can you seek input from all stakeholders? Now, voice doesn't necessarily equate to vote. So you're the principal, you're in charge, but you have to take in the consensus of what people are saying. What's gone well on the campus? What do we want? What do we want to ensure never, ever, ever changes? What areas are, as Jimmy Casas would say, below average? And what are areas that we need to focus on to make us, better? Asking student input. Like, students, what do you think? We have a large campus in San Antonio, Texas. And so student input is important when it comes to how kids transition, when it comes to the safety of the campus, when it comes to the well-being of the campus. And so really asking students to kind of go from there. And then third thing I would say definitely is get a coach. Find a coach that you can reach out to. Find a coach that you can trust. Find a coach that has been there. Sit with winners. The conversation's different. Like we have Nick Saban's famous quote: "Find somebody that's doing the job that you're doing, and reach out to them and make that your confidant. Make that your person. That can be a person in your district. That could be a person in Rochester, New York, with Coach Jim Johnson that you're reaching out to, because sometimes you do need someone outside of your district to be able to bounce ideas off of, because they don't know." They don't have a skin in the game. They're just there to listen and give you good advice. And so even though you've made it to the pinnacle of your career, which I would call the principalship the pinnacle of the career, you can never stop learning, and a coach is extremely invaluable. So I would say, just to kind of wrap it up, first 30 days on the job is extremely, extremely important. Seek voice from all three stakeholders on your campus: students, staff, and parents. And then three, find you a coach. Find, whether it's paid, unpaid, whether you buy them coffee, whether you buy them a great burger or something, find somebody that you can reach out to. Just yesterday, I reached out to a guy in Dallas, Texas, who's doing the kind of same stuff that I'm doing, and I sought some input from him. And he said, "Hey, give me a call." I sent him a text. He gave me a call. 20 minutes later, we had kind of gone from there. And so don't be afraid to reach out to people. All they can do is left you unread, right? But don't be afraid to reach out to people and say, "Hey, I really like what you're doing. Can you carve out 10 minutes for me so that I can learn from you?" So that would be my advice. And all that is great shameless plug is in the blueprint. That is some stuff that I've learned through the hard way, and that I spell out for administrators to kind of take away from the book.
A lot of times when we're trying to climb the corporate ladder, or get higher, get to that next position, we worry so much about who's ahead of us on that ladder, and we worry about pleasing them. Who can promote us? Who can get us to the next level? So maybe in your case, that might be a superintendent, that might be somebody higher up, even in education and the government. And maybe for our young and emerging leader, it's the next boss at the corporate level, or whoever that is. But your three stakeholders or different people within your organization. And that just underscores the importance of listening, right? And being a strong leader to those who are already under your tutelage. Talk a little bit about how important listening is, and how you develop those listening skills, especially for those three stakeholders you mentioned.
Yeah, John, great question. And within the blueprint, I shared that my first year as a principal, I struggled. I was a great assistant principal, and then my first year as a principal, I kind of struggled with just the day-to-day management of it. They don't prepare you really for in principal school for a lot of things that you kind of go with. And so in year two, I really had to look in the mirror and say, what can I do differently to change what the campus is perceiving about my leadership skills. And I come back to a listening tour that I did. I called two things. One, I called hallway conversations. And that is the overwhelming belief that I can't be in my office during the school day. Like I have a pair of Adidas that I wear, a pair of New Balance. Shout out to Adidas and hoping to get an NIL deal because we sport them every day walking the campus for what we have, right? We need that. And so the listening tour is going by door to door and having a conversation with each teacher or staff member that I come up to. And it might be walking up to Jim and saying, Jim, how was your weekend? Jim, how about those Cowboys? Or Jim, how about those Buffalo Bills? Or, hey, do you think Syracuse is going to have a different year? Hey, that quarterback that we got from Ohio State that's now at Syracuse now is really rocking it. Let's have those conversations. And I really purposefully tried to have non-educational conversations with people so that they would get to know me. I have a unique ability to remember names, kids' names, what they do, where they go to school. So I would try to ask about their son or daughter and how they did in their games, and that just built that visibility, trust, that positivity that we're really trying to get off. So that was my year two focus, was hallway conversations. I stole something from Jimmy Casas. I think that is absolutely amazing. That goes with listening, and I would send out 4 or 5 questions, and I still do this now. 10 years into the principalship, I send out 4 or 5 questions to the entire staff. And I tell the staff, you can pick any one of them to come in and talk about, but I want you to sign up for a 10 or 15-minute one-on-one interview with me in the office. And I always ask one question. I always say one question at the bottom I'm going to ask. And it's always a themed type of thing. What's gone well? How can I help and support you? What traditions do we need to keep? What is some red tape I can cut? What is, you're doing so well. What can I do to help you get to that next level? Any of those. And they come in and I have index cards and I just take notes and I look for trends and I go back to my leadership team and I say, hey, look, 75% of our teaching, our faculty is saying this. 10% is saying this, 5% is saying this. How can we help? And I always caveat it by bringing those results back to the staff to say, hey, these are areas that we want to improve on. And if we commit to one area to improve on this semester, we can eradicate average. Again, I'm stealing Jimmy Casas's work, eradicate average on a campus, and then be able to propel that area to an area that we feel proud of. And then next semester or next year, we address a different issue. This year, cell phones, tardies. Those are things that we addressed on our campus. And I feel like we've done an amazing, amazing job with both of those things. And it's come back to listening to teachers say the phones are a distraction, the tardies are a distraction. If they're not in class, they can't learn. So our theme this year has been, you're here to learn. School is about learning. And that's what we come back to all the time as we're talking. And all of that, John, came out of listening to teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well said, Todd. A couple things you really struck was, I kid people that in education we forget, and I know I've heard this on some of your podcast interviews with Darren, is the kidding, and I kid educators, is the 3 R's are relationships, 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 and we often forget that,
Facts. Mm-hmm.
and that's a really powerful thing. And the other thing that you really struck a chord because I lost my first head coaching job at 25 years old. I did a great job, led the team to 18 consecutive losses, and they decided not to bring me back. But then I got a mentor. Ironically, my first mentor in coaching after my father that I got played for in high school, ironically, was Bill Van Gundy at a college, junior college, and both his sons ended up being head coaches in the NBA. So that was a bad. And then one other real quick
Not bad.
story that was interesting. I took over a small town. You'd be familiar. It was called Leroy,
Yeah.
which was a
Mm-hmm.
big football. And when I took it over, they had been terrible, and we were fortunate we got it going. But the biggest thing they had a great coach at Livonia, and everybody in the league when I joined hated him because he won all the time. He became one of my closest friends,
Absolutely.
and I learned so much from him, and it helped me immensely. So I really like what you're saying about getting that coach and mentor because
Mhm.
Go where people that have learned before you, especially people that are highly successful. Don't be jealous of them, learn
Mm-mm.
from them.
Yeah.
And that's so huge. Well, let's delve into it because I'm excited to read your book, The Blueprint. Tell us and talk to us about, because we hear all the time about culture, right? Building a great school culture or team culture or business culture. But culture is a huge word right now that we talk a lot about. But give us some ideas that you put in the book about building that great school culture.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's $1 million question also. Books and speakers and podcasts and everything is around building that culture. And so I would say the easiest way to build the culture that you want to build on your campus is to treat adults like adults. Do not
Mhm.
micromanage what you're doing. You hire great people, and then there's an adage that says hire great people and get out of their way. I like to hire great people and walk alongside them. I like to hire great people and be with them. So the culture of your campus starts with the adults in your building. Like you have to have people that are bought in, committed, ready to rock, that want to be at my place at Churchill High School. Like education now has changed. People are leaving the professions. On a random Tuesday, people are turning in resignations, not even waiting to semester. And so you have to hire great people. You have to empower them and you have to treat them like adults. And the simplest thing that you can do is if you come to me and say, hey, my grandson's got a play and I have third period class, but fourth period lunch. Can I go see my grandson play? It's my job to make sure that I can do anything I can to be able to make sure that my adults can be family. We talk about family, like a culture buzzword also is we're a family. Every campus talks about being a family. Well, what's a family? A family takes care of each other. If somebody's hurting, a family reaches out. If somebody needs help, a family member takes care of them. Heck, at the end of the day, it's only people we can trust these days as family members that we have. So I think honestly, the easiest, doesn't cost any money. It is one of the easiest things that people can implement right now is to treat people like adults. Don't micromanage. Don't send stupid emails that slap the whole campus when there's 4 people that are affecting your email that you're sending. Have conversations with people that are not able to live up to the standards, because nothing destroys a great culture. When you get great people on the campus, you set high expectations, and then all of a sudden people are coming in under that and they're not addressed. So if we're going to set expectations, we got to address the folks that are not living up to those expectations. And we got to find out, is it a compliance issue or are you can't do it? If it's a compliance issue, we can figure out a way. Either you got to get with the program or you got to find a new place to hang your hat. If it's I just need help getting there, that's what I'm here for. So treat people like adults. And then at the end of the day, I honestly feel that, the goofy adage, when the principal sneezes, everybody catches a cold. Like the principal of your campus needs to be seen by the students, the parents, and the staff every single day. So I start my day every morning at the drop off. And it's still 100 degrees in San Antonio, Texas in
Wow.
September. It's 90 in October. It's uncomfortably hot. Now, in November, December, January, Coach, I'll send you pictures of us, at the beach or something while you guys are dealing with that lake effect snow. But it is a different story. But parents need to see that builds the 3 things we talk about: positivity, visibility, and trust. Kids need to see the principal. Principal needs to be in the hallway during passing period. Whatever area of the campus is the most highly trafficked area during passing periods, the principal needs to put himself there or herself there. The principal needs to walk the halls, thank teachers for being at their doors. If that's the expectation, then you need to thank people for being there. But I need to be out. Like if I tell people during passing period I need to get out of the office, then unless I got basically the superintendent or a crying parent in my office, then I need to say, hey, give me 5 minutes. I need to step out. I've got 2,500 kids on the move right now, and I need to be able to be out and be with them to go from there. So treat people with respect. Be the leader of your campus. Like I think if you asked any teacher on my campus, I am their biggest champion. I am their cheerleader. I am carrying their banner. I take pride in them. I defend them. I champion them on social media, to parents, in faculty meetings. So if I can hire great people, if I can treat them like adults, and I can get them what they need, that is the easiest way, the quickest way to start building the culture that you want. Then you sit back and look and you say, okay, where do I need to make some adjustments? Where am I not living up to what I want to live to? That might be through a coach, inviting a coach to walk your campus and take a look at, hey, listen, we talk about greeting every kid in the hallway. We talk about being a friendly campus, but I walked by and 5 adults didn't talk to any kids. Or we talk about being a clean campus and your campus is dirty. It's just, what do I profess, but then, what is the real truth? Again, I'll go back to Jimmy Casa. Shout out to Jimmy. That's that undercurrent. It's the undercurrent of what we're doing. It's what we're saying, but what's really going on. And then honestly, listening. John, you talked about listening, going back to teachers and listening to them. The school isn't named after me. And when I leave, it won't be named after me. So going back to listening and voice, teachers want to have a voice in it. And if I can clearly articulate what we're doing, every teacher will be behind me, alongside me, not even behind me. If I can't, and this was the problem that I had in my book, and I document it in year one, I failed to articulate where I wanted to go. And so I failed to articulate that. And so once I realized, oh man, I got to clearly communicate what I want. People shouldn't read my mind. Kids shouldn't read a teacher's mind. Teachers shouldn't read the principal's mind. So all of that I document in the book, and it's all coming back to it. I make it sound easy because I think it is easy, but treat people like adults. That's where it all starts. That's the cornerstone. Take care of adults. Adults take care of kids. When kids are taken care of, parents are happy. When parents are happy, superintendent and principal are happy. Right there. Right? Let's go.
Yeah. Wow. And it's interesting studying like leadership and psychology and trends. And one of them being this idea of busyness and how, for some reason, I don't know if this is new or we're just finally starting to realize it. I don't know, but the trends that psychologists talk about is how being busy now in our minds correlates to worth. And the busier we are, the more we feel like we are valuable. Sorry, got to take this call, got to be here in 5 minutes there. And oftentimes that can lead somebody like a principal, leader of thousands of people on that campus, to want to just stay in their office and, sorry, too busy to talk to any of you people, So what is it how do you carve out that time on your calendar in the midst of what I'm sure is a lot of busyness to make that a priority to get out there?
Great question. And it's detailed in the book. Like, honestly, a great principal, and I'm not one of them yet, a great principal has a good relationship, a fantastic relationship with their secretary or administrative assistant. And that person has to be, that's your point guard, coach. She is my point guard. She is my Pearl Washington, my Sherman Douglas. Like, she is my person running that great Syracuse 80s, 90s, when Boeheim and the Dome was rocking, and, we were taking down Georgetown and St. John's, and, when they destroyed the Big East, it took a piece of my heart. Like, as I digress for a second, that week before the NCAA tournament in March, when the Big East tournament was at Madison Square Garden, was like, we should have taken that off of school. That should have been a holiday. And I was in New York City last year in March, and I don't even know what tournament was at the Barclays, but just having Marquette and whoever else was in that, it was unbelievable. And I can only imagine what it was like when Syracuse and Georgetown and those two, I mean, I can't even imagine, really what that was like. So I digress. My point guard, my secretary is my point guard. She controls my calendar. So it all goes back to having a structure and system in place for the 24 hours that you have in your day. We all have the same 24 hours in our day. The calendar needs to basically drive what a principal does. And you need to prioritize what you need to prioritize. So for me, I neglected my own personal health for a long time. Like, I would run 12, 14-hour days. I'd pick up a burger on the way home, sleep in, never got out and exercise. So now on the calendar, 5:45, I'm out the door. I'm either at the gym or I'm running 2 miles a day to keep the doctor away. So I have to prioritize that. On Mondays, I prioritize being in classrooms. And so I block off everything I'm doing so I can get in classrooms. Unless the superintendent needs me, I am out. I am out and about. Then on Tuesday, I start to carve out 15 or 20-minute pockets in my calendar for the big tasks that I need. I know at the end of each week, I have to send a parent s'more newsletter. I know at the end of each week, I need to send an email to the students. Previous, I was trying to do that at 2:30 on Friday afternoon. I was, scrambling. It wasn't very good. I was missing things. So I started to carve out places in there. I've now added to my calendar podcasts. And so on Wednesdays during my third period, I will stream a podcast when I'm in here. Anyone that pops in or someone says, "Hey, listen to it," because I want to prioritize my own learning also. I prioritize all 3 lunch periods. I need to be out. 1,000 kids at lunch, each lunch. I need to be at lunch duty. I need to be out supporting my folks of what we have. And then I have to prioritize the events that I go to after school. My first year as a leader, I went to everything. My kids didn't know me. My wife didn't know me. My mom and dad lived down the street. They didn't know me. So now I have to prioritize making sure that I am seen by as many people and support as many kids, but also I'm able to get home at a decent hour each night to be able to be husband, father, neighbor, son, all of those type of things that I severely neglected. So I would tell any first year leader, like, if you don't have a good relationship with your administrative assistant, set up 15 or 20 minutes once a week, go over your calendar, go over your tasks. Every morning we talk. Hey, what do we got on the calendar? What do you need? And at some point, I'm able to turn over a lot of things to my secretary for her to handle. A parent that calls, Coach Jim Johnson calls, he's got a problem. His son's got a problem with the basketball coach. That doesn't come to the principal. You know why? Because that needs to go to the basketball coach. And my secretary can do a good job of shifting that out where it needs to be. She'll tell me at the end of the day, "Hey, Jim Johnson called his son. There's an issue." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And if I hear from the basketball coach, great. If I don't, I know he took care of it. First year, Todd Bloomer, I would have called the parent. I would have got in the weeds 45 minutes. I would have set up a meeting. And next thing you know, I'm trying to figure out who the third tuba in the band should be when that's not my job. And so the secretary is able to help me with, doing those type of things. Parent calls, they want to talk. Have you talked to the counselor? Have you talked to the assistant principal? I'm not dodging anything, but it frees me up to do a few more things for what I have. So meeting with them. And then if you don't have a good relationship, work on it, but you can control your calendar. Start your day with what's important to you. Knock out what has to be done, what superintendent is expecting at 2:00. Well, that's got to be done. Sometimes you got to work at night. Sometimes you got to go home at 4:30 and make dinner for the family. So prioritizing your calendar. Your calendar should drive what you do each and every day.
Well said. Well, Todd, I knew you've brought it up, and it's something, because I obviously building teams was something that I studied immensely, and I'm still very curious. So you talked about bringing the right people on your team, as the great Jim Collins talks about, getting the right people on the bus, right, and then getting the right seat. So in that situation, it's twofold. One would be, what are some of the things you're looking for the people you want to bring on to your team, where they will be a good culture fit? And the other thing, I'm always curious, because I've become a collector of good interview questions. So if you have one or two interview questions that kind of brings out what you really think you're looking for, that would be helpful for me and John and our listeners. So
yeah, no doubt. So since we've seen the studies of colleges that are not able to produce as many teachers as needed. Texas is like in a shortage of teachers, and nationwide, people aren't going into the profession. People are leaving the profession, just at different times. It's important to hang on to the people that you have. So we made a conscientious effort about 2 years ago, and we kind of stumbled upon it, but now it's our sales pitch, is we are recruiting two folks. Former students that went to Churchill High School that have now come back to be teachers. And we're making a marketing plea to say, you enjoyed your 4 years at high school here, come back and give that to somebody else. You enjoyed 4 years on the wrestling team, in the orchestra, in the ROTC, come back and work with that person that is still here now. And so we've put that out there. And, we've got probably 10 former students that are on staff right now, which I think is really amazing. And that goes back to, they had a good experience here. So they remember good things about it. They're going to try to duplicate that for somebody else. Second thing that I look for particularly is, do you live in our community? And that is something that is unique. 10 years ago, you would have said, I don't want to live in the community. I don't want to walk to the mailbox and see, my neighbor at the mailbox or something. Guys, I live 1.2 miles from my campus. all 5 of my children have graduated from here. Probably everybody in my school knows where I live. I don't want that to be the case, but it doesn't bother me because in my mind, I'm going to work harder because my neighbors are the people that I serve at school. The kids that I see, we have a grocery store just like Wegmans. It's called HEB. It is the same as Wegmans. And when I'm on aisle 9 buying milk and someone comes down the aisle, I don't mind that. My grocery store is their grocery store, and the church I go to, I always see kids and families at there. So I look for people that live in the community to work and teach here. In fact, this summer, I hired 3 people that are 3 people. 2 of them on my assistant principal team have children that attend school here. I have 3 overall that have children that attend school here. And in my mind, not that they're not working hard right now, but you're always going to work harder when your child is here because you want the best for your child, their friends, their parents, for what you have. And so those are, kind of my plea to people is let's hire former Chargers and let's hire people that live in the community. Now, I touched on every Friday, I send an email to the staff. And about twice in the first semester and twice in the second semester, I make a note to say, are you working and looking for a career change and interested in becoming a teacher? Do you want the same schedule as your child? That we have ways that we can get you here at Churchill under alternative certification paths. I can help you with that. And I've actually had 2 or 3 people reach out to me and say, I'm interested in that. I've worked 20 years as a banker or an insurance company, and I'm ready for a change. I don't want to work in a cubicle, and I'd love to have the same schedule as kids do and stuff like that. And so really that is my ploy. Now, interview questions. Here's the game changer, I think, with interview questions. And it takes a little bit of time, but if you're looking for interview questions and game changers, this is the secret. So if you're listening, you're getting a secret at Churchill High School. I bring students onto a panel for most of my major interviews. So librarian, assistant principal, counselor, head coaches, I bring students onto a panel. And I don't tell the candidate that the students are going to be there, because you cannot lie. You can lie to an adult. You can Google all the questions and you can practice them and rehearse them and spit them out, but you can't lie to a kid. And so I bring in usually a captain or people that are involved, and I tell them, hey, look, this is a voice, not a vote. What would we like to ask? What are we looking for? And we talk all to them about, there's privacy and you can't share because somebody's mom or dad may be applying. So, and I don't worry about that because I've got a good faith and trust in the kids, and they respect me and they appreciate being a part of it. But it gives ownership to students. And I'll give one specific example. We hired a head dance coach, former student, graduate 2014 from Churchill High School. We hired a former student, and 2 of my captains were on the team. And while we come together, and ultimately the decision's always mine, they were right there. They were like, this is the person that we want. They brainstormed the questions, they asked. So whenever possible, getting student voice brings such unique insight to a committee is unbelievable. And it gives you as a principal goodwill, because those parents are out there telling, hey, my child had a stake in who's up there. And that principal, he listens to kids and he listens to input. And at the end of the day, people are always going to disagree with something I do. But if I lay that track record out to say, no, I am listening, I am seeking input, and at the end of the day, I make the final determination. God, it's great when they're right on the same page as me. And then I tell them, hey, look, you 2 go back and you tell all the people how great this dance director is going to be. You guys go out and spread that word. You create the excitement of what's going to be. And I think that's really great. So off the top of my head, I talk about it in my book, the student panels that we have. I think it's a game changer when you have the time to be able to do that.
Hey, Todd, just one thing, because I love that. And I've had that as part of interviews as well, can you give us just an example of a student question you said, wow, that was really good?
Yeah, a lot of times the students are more challenging or difficult with the questions because they want the best of their program. And I'll go back to the dance. They want to be at a competitive level, state and nationally. And that was those were the questions that was asked. How are we going to return to the greatness of Churchill dance? Like, what are we going to do? What does that look like on the day-to-day? like class to class? What does that look like growing dancers? And then what does that look like with competing? And I would have never thought that. I'm talking about, like what do we, how do you deal with a kid that got cut from the team? You're asking questions about that. These kids are like, no, what are we going to do with these kids here? And how are we going to be great? And I just think that's the awesome input that they really have. One of the things, we had an assistant principal. Assistant principal is a great opportunity for student voice. And one of the connections was, how are you going to connect with kids that are not, I'll call discipline or attendance concerns, but the kids that every day get up and do the great things that we ask them to do? How are you going to connect with those kids? Because on that panel was a variety of kids, but they want to know, are you going to connect with me? How are you going to help me? And like I told you, you can't make that up. Like you can't just that's either your core and your heart. And if you answer those questions correctly, you are the kind of person I want to continue the culture on the campus that we're going to make Churchill High School the school that we want it to be. So kid panels, awesome. And honestly, Coach, saying to them, what areas do we need? Where do we need to get better? Where are we just average? And then let's brainstorm some questions. And then I ultimately can say yes or no. And I ultimately can, and the interview itself is by itself. So the teacher, the assistant principal walks into a room and there's kids. So it's not a panel of the principal on one side. It's a separate station along the way to get to us. And then always my first question becomes, hey, John, what'd you think of the students? Tell me. And you're like, holy cow, I was not prepared for that. What great representation you have of the campus. I want to work here is always the response. And that's what I'm trying to create.
Wow. You've said some great
Amazing
things, Todd. There's only one thing that I take a little bit of issue with, and that's when earlier on you mentioned Wegmans and how you have a store down there that's a lot like Wegmans.
We do.
But I don't know up here if you're listening in upstate New York, if you think there's anything that could possibly compete with Wegmans. So we're a little bit thrown for a curve on that one. Like, have you ever been to the Pittsford Wegmans?
I don't know. I left Rochester in 1996. And so I can't remember, but Wegmans and HEB have similar philosophies in how they treat employees, how they treat their customer, and the experience that they create. Like people don't talk about any other grocery store besides Wegmans and HEB, like being that's my store. Like they're very territorial. Yep. You mentioned the Pittsford Wegmans, like that's your store. Like I have an HEB store here. That's my HEB. And they do a really neat job of building that culture that we talk about and treating people not like employees, but partners. So as we're talking about how do we build that culture and climate, who would have ever thought that we'd study a grocery store to build a culture on a campus as a basketball coach or as a school principal? Who would have thought that? So if you're ever here, if you're ever in Texas, I would love for you to take a walk through and say, yeah, it's pretty similar.
That's amazing. That is crazy, really amazing, because a lot of us probably didn't think that there was ever anything like Wegmans throughout the world, because it is something special, but really cool, Todd. I also want to ask, as a teacher, as a young and emerging teacher, you're looking for an opportunity, and there are a lot of opportunities out there, like you said, in Texas and also here in New York. And that gives some teachers even some choice. Potentially, which means that you have the opportunity to choose maybe what kind of culture that you want, maybe even what kind of principal you want to work for. What are some things, some characters of a principal that an emerging teacher should look for as someone that they want to be the principal of the school they teach in?
Yeah, great question. 5 years ago, if you would have said, hey, if I offered you a job and I called you and you said, hey, can I wait till tomorrow? I would have said no. You got to make the decision now. Now I have to wait a little bit on that. And I always tell people, this is what I tell them now, is the principal the one that is calling you to offer you the job? Is the principal the one that is calling to advocate for why you would be successful on the campus? And is the principal, can you tell, has a vested interest in the campus? Every teacher that I hired the last 3 or 4 years, I have sat in on their interview panel and made the final determination. So I take the hiring as probably the most important job that I have on the campus of Churchill High School. Besides the safety of security of our campus, hiring is the next most important thing. So I would say, is the principal calling and lobbying for you to be on the campus? Like, I think that's one thing. Like, I want you. I am going to move mountains to get you to Churchill High School. I'm going to make sure that I can take care of you and make it an atmosphere that you want to be in. I would also tell you, check out any of my social media posts. Check out LinkedIn, check out, X or Twitter, check out who I am. I'm an open book online. And if you read through some of my texts, you'll see where my heart is. My heart's going to be supporting teachers. And I would say third, reach out to anybody on my campus, anybody, and ask what it's like to work here. Like, do your research. Like, I'm proud of you for wanting to do that. Do your research. And if you think, X high school is better, then I wish you the best. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to support you. We're going to take care of you. Here's the systems we're going to put in place. Here's how we're going to, here's how you're going to thrive. And at the end of the day, if you decide, hey, I want to go here, I wish you nothing but the best. So I would say, if you're a new teacher, do your research on the principal. Don't just do the research on test scores, or don't just do the research, on the campus itself. Find out about the leadership. Find out, if you're a math teacher, who the math dean is. If you're going to be a counselor, who is that lead counselor? If you're going to be an assistant principal, who's on that team? Can you work with them? What is the reputation? What is the, going from there? And if all else fails, find a parent in the community. Talk to me a little bit about your experience here. So do the research. Find out if your principal is the champion of the school. Research them. Ask questions. And the last question always in the interview is, do you have any questions for us? And a lot of times the answer is always, oh, when are you going to make a decision? And that's a softball answer. I love when a candidate opens up a notebook and says, I do have some questions for you. Number one, number two, number three, let's go. You've done research. I'm going to tell you why you need to be a Churchill Charger. And I've shared during interviews, I'll stop in the middle of an interview once we get there and say, John, do you want a job? Like, we don't need to wait till tomorrow, because I've already done all my research on the people that have sat in front of me. Like, I can offer at any point, and I'm not going to let you get out the door if I know you are just what I need. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they're like, wow, can I think about it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. What questions would you have that would prevent you from being a Churchill Charger math teacher, science teacher, social studies teacher? And then I explain back. And then a lot of times people enjoy the fact, or people appreciate the respect that I give them. And I always tell them, I'm going to treat you like an adult. I'm going to support you. I'm going to cut the red tape, and whatever you need, you let me know. Text me and I will make sure of it. And I think that's the culture we got on our campus.
Yeah. Cutting the red tape. That's huge, because you're really going against some of the traditional interview, like, well, I'll have a decision for you in 2 weeks.
Yes.
And then which prolongs the process, but you're really getting to the bottom of things. I really appreciate that. Coach, I know we want to dive into the blueprint, but any other questions before we head right into the book?
So it's a two-part about books, because I'm such an avid reader. So what I'd like, Todd, if you could kind of just give us, you've said some great things about the book, and I'm really anxious to read it. Can you kind of just give us an overview of what the book looks like? And then, of course, I got to give you, because obviously I'm proud I have a book as well, but I'm also become a guy that likes to recommend books. So if you have like one or two books you would recommend for a young leader, but I'd like to start with yours. Give us just an overview of your book, and then one or two books you would recommend outside of your book.
Yeah, thank you. Book's a neat story. Started as an email to my brother. He was going from math teacher to assistant principal. Good big brother help. I started writing an email to him. It grew. Over the course of about 7 or 8 years, I worked on it off and on. Honestly, it's a decade-long passion project. Started seeking advice, interviewing leaders around the state. Started sharing, being extremely vulnerable, to be honest with you. I've always been a successful person. And, I poured into chapter 3 of my book, just the struggles that I had and how I overcame them. Started looking at culture and climate, just dedicated a chapter on that. Dedicated a chapter on interview questions. And then chapter 6 is really my favorite chapter. It's what I would do differently. Like, if I could go back in time to 2014, this is what I would do differently to start my career. And I think that's the most profound. And it's honestly like wrapping up the book. Chapter 1 starts with the first 30 days on the job, how important that is. Chapter 2, basically find your tribe, your mentorship, find your coach. Chapter 3 is my journey, leading 2 different schools, what I've learned. Jumping in. Chapter 4 is hiring and making sure you're put. I'm sorry. Chapter 4 is campus culture, and Chapter 5 is hiring. Chapter 6 is making sure what I would do differently. And so that's kind of the summarization of the book. It's a neat story. Our alma mater here at Churchill is Sir Winston Churchill. He's got a great saying. We have it out front of all of our campus buildings: never, never, never give up. And I never gave up on the project because I knew someday I had something that I could share with the world. And I got rejected by some publishers, never gave up. Partnered with my daughter, Bethany. Shout out and love her dearly. She started helping me, and we were going to self-publish on Amazon, and that was going to be the way. And then shout out to Darren Peppard. Dr. P, DP came along, and we did. He said, "Can you share chapter 1 with me?" And I said, "Dude, I can share it all with you." And so I gave it to him, and we signed a contract. It took about 12 or 14 months, really, from the time I signed the contract to it was just released in August. So here we are at the end of October. We're going on like 2-3 months. Steady sales. I've been very proud of the sales. It's interesting, and you guys understand this, and Jim, you probably get this. You go from being an author to a businessman. Like all of a sudden, okay, now I got to have a website that people can buy a book off of. I got to, get out there and market. I got to get out there and share, and I got to get out there and promote. And so, it becomes like a full-time job. Like on Sundays, I get up in the morning after a good run and going to mass, and I have to ship books on Sundays. And Jim, you know this. I mean, you got to go to the post office. You got to package it up. You write a note in there. You sign it. It's a process. It's a good thing to have, but it's a process. And so, that's kind of the book in itself. It's got some good advanced praise because it's practical, and that's what they've shared. And they share that it's written by a practitioner that's still in the field. And so each and every day that I go to work, I'm doing the same thing that people are reading the book about. I'm doing the same struggles from the community, from the school safety, vaping, state accountability, hiring. Like, I get it. Teddy Roosevelt's got a great speech, "The Man in the Arena." It's in my office at work. He basically said, don't take advice from someone that's not in the arena every single day, getting bloodied and dirtied. We've expanded it to say, don't listen to the people in the cheap seats. Listen to the people that are doing the job every single day. So nothing against anybody that's left the profession, because we've learned a tremendous amount from them. But every single day I get up, I put a tie on some days, don't put a tie on some days. I head out, I'm taking care of business, just like every current assistant principal and principal. And so that's the part that I think is really unique. I am developing a study guide to go with it, to be able to look at some leadership teams, to be able to, come together and reflect. And then, Jim, as you know, it's humbling when people reach out and say, "That's a great book." The fact that I'm talking to you, when J-Mac went crazy on ESPN, like the whole world watched it. And I was so proud. It was my hometown of Rochester, New York. And now, here I am talking to you, and I have your book here. And so, like, you never know the circles that you're going to get at when you become, I'll say an author. So the book, it's humbling that people are buying it. It means the world that people are picking it up and sharing it with them. That's just absolutely awesome. I would say the ultimate book to go to if you have not read Culturized by Jimmy Casas. Culturized by Jimmy Casas is a game changer. I do think that book right there really helped shape. I think Jimmy is, just a great voice in education. Broody Kafele, Principal Kafele, Saturday mornings, he puts out some great Facebook free stuff on his YouTube channel. He's got great books out there. And his book is My School Better Because I Lead It, was truly a book that is something that is really enjoyed. Todd Whitaker, really anything by Todd Whitaker. Seeing Todd Whitaker is a lot of fun. And then Darren Peppard, Road to Awesome is a good book, and he really was able to kind of share with that. I'm an avid reader too. I got 2 books next to my desk. Coach, yours is one of them. And yours is one of them. And then a new book that I just picked up from another guy in my district. It's called Cooking Up Experiences in the Classroom by Gabriel Carrillo. And Gabriel is an educator in San Antonio, also just put out a book. And so, kind of supporting us local, grassroots guys when it comes to what we're reading. So, and then I got a book on Willie Nelson next to my desk. Like if you've, Willie Nelson, 90 years old, it has been generational for like 4 different generations. The 50s, came back strong in the 70s, hit it in the 90s, and now in 2023, 24, he's still relevant for what he does. And so, reading also for pleasure is something that I enjoy.
Yep.
So any of those good books.
Excellent.
You can find more information up at toddmbloomer.com. Correct, Todd?
Yes, sir.
That's where you can find the book too, / the blueprint. But if you just head on to the website, toddmbloomer.com, you'll find the blueprint is right up there available for you right now to purchase. And also not just for a school administrator, but if you're a teacher, if you're just in the community, even in a completely different profession, if you're a student in a leadership position, Todd, you mentioned it earlier, but talk a little bit more about why the book is so relevant to them too, not just the school administrator.
Yeah, it's the blueprint is, for lack of a better words, just kind of the path to get where you want to get to. And honestly, I believe that the book provides hope, insight, structures, and systems for you to be able to find the blueprint to your success that you're looking for. Chapter 1 is the biggest chapter in my book, and it starts with 2 sections: things that you can physically do and mindsets that you have to have. And I feel like those mindsets can transfer into any job that you have on a campus, in a community. It could be a businessman, it could be a coach, it could be a government leader. To be honest with you, it is anything along those lines. So I think the book has transferable skills. We'll just go back to listening. We listen to our spouses come home sometimes at night, and they talk about their job, and man, I wish so and so would listen. They don't listen to me. You listen to your children at night when they come home. Mom, the teacher don't listen. Dad, the principal don't listen. So I think listening, and the book talks about ways that you can build in structures to provide input to people. And so I think that is extremely important. And while it's a little bit off of your question, I will share with you this. The book also challenges leaders to meet parents in the language they speak. And we don't do a good job of that. Like San Antonio, Texas, amongst like America, we have a large number of emerging bilingual families that speak Spanish. And I don't speak Spanish. I took French in high school, and I went to Quebec when I was in high school. But if I would have known I was in San Antonio, I would have taken Spanish. And so really, how do we reach families that don't speak the language of us? How do we reach families that don't utilize email as their primary mode of checking email each and every day? What are those platforms that we can look at? I never thought this, but Facebook is a huge way to connect with families in English and Spanish. Because if someone monitors it pretty closely, you can have questions that are sent to you from there. So at the end of the day, I honestly feel like the book is great, not just for principals, but all for anybody in the community, for kids, because it provides a blueprint for what you should expect from your campus. So as a student, this is what you should expect from your leadership. From a parent, this is what you should expect. From a potential teacher, this is what you should expect. So come work for me. Like as you're reading that and you're saying, hey, this is what you should expect, come work for me, because I'm an open book, like literally and figuratively. Come look and see what we have. And I'll tell you the ultimate thing, John, that the other day, I guess it was in the beginning of August, I'm walking down the hall. Sophomore boy yells my name, Bloomer. Hey, what's up, bud? Can you sign my book? He had bought the book, bought it to school, and I autographed it. And I thought, who the heck would spend money on my book when you're 15 or 16 years old? When I was 15 or 16, if I had $20, I'm not spending it on a book, but I'm definitely not spending it on my principal's book. And so really that just gives me hope that there's kids that see leadership and that see opportunities. And I think the book speaks to not just, aspiring administrators and current administrators, but the community as a whole.
Hey, Todd, I just want to tell you, you got me all fired up. If
go.
I ever come back into education, I'm going to come work for you.
All right, Coach, come on. We'll have a good basketball team this year.
Todd Bloomer, toddmbloomer.com is where you want to go. Link down in the show notes to grab that book, just like that sophomore boy did. It could make a big difference no matter what you're doing in your career and life. Todd, thank you so much for all the leadership insights you provided today, and also just for the great leader that you are down there in San Antonio. I know that your community is grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your time. I will extend the hospitality if you're ever in the Lone Star State of the great city of San Antonio. Let me know. We'll track down a burger or something good to eat.
Sounds great. So